Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Santa Monica KTC's Thursday night Sangha. We're so happy to have you with us, Lama Kathy. You're going to be talking about Ngöndro this evening. Wanted to make quick announcements. So if anybody would like to become a member of Santa Monica KTC, you can check out our website, which is santamonicaktc.com. We have different levels of membership. And everything that's happening within our Sangha and what's happening on Thursday nights are going to be listed there as well. And lastly, if you would like to make a donation this evening towards Lama Kathy, you can do so on our website or through the link on the newsletter that we send out as a reminder today. And with that, we'll just put all of our mics on mute and have Lama Kathy start. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks very much. It's good to see everyone this evening. And I'm really, really delighted to be talking about, yet another wonderful subject, which is the practice of our tradition. And I don't know, I think you're having several different lamas teach on this, yeah? Okay. Well, I hope I don't repeat. I should have watched the other ones first, but
it's all good. We are trying to get our ideas to have a different teacher talk each time about it and bring their own whatever they think it's good for us to hear. So
okay.
Whatever you say will be good for us.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Well, hey, and what would be so interesting is if it does end up being a repeat. And so that means that it's all of the important stuff you got, so it's like that. So I'll start by reciting the prayers of taking refuge and engendering bodhicitta. And then after that, I'll make a short presentation, and then we'll open things up for questions. Okay, so I'll start with the prayer of taking refuge that's at the beginning of the Chenrezig empowerment, the Chenrezig sadhana, and you can join in if you like. O Sanje Chudan Sochi Chonamla Jangchu Pardu Dani Kyapsuchi Daji Jinsoji Pe Sunamki Drola Penshir Sanje Druparsho Sanje Chudam Sochi Chonamla Jangchu Pardu Tani Kyapsuchi Daji Jinsoji Be Sunamki Drola Penshir Sanje Druparsho Sanje Chudam Sochi Chonamla Jangchu Pardu Dani Kyapsuchi Daji Jinsoji Be Sunamki Drola Penshir Sanje Druparsho. Okay, and then I have one more prayer to recite, and then we'll begin. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche Tagi Chior Pede Den Shula Kadrin Jembo Gone Je Sunte Kusum Tuging Udrup Sal Du So. Okay, thank you. Oh my goodness, so much to say about this wonderful topic. The whole topic of Ngöndro is sort of tied up with what it means to follow a lineage and to become part of a lineage. And so we have to then ask ourselves, well, what is a lineage? And why is it important? And so I want to start by saying that when I first met Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, I didn't really understand what lineage was. but gradually over time, he taught us what it was and what it meant. And so what I'll share with you tonight are a few of those thoughts that I have that came from his teachings and the teachings of the other lamas at our home monastery, Karma Triana Dharma Chakra in Woodstock, New York. At first, when I listened to Rinpoche speak, I said, wow, what a wise person, and a person who has really walked the talk and exemplified everything that he was talking about. He exemplified wisdom. He exemplified compassion. He exemplified knowledge and skillfulness. And I said, I don't know what it is that he's doing, but I want to do that. You know, it was like being at a restaurant and watching a dish go by and say, I'll have what they're having, you know. So I met this really remarkable individual who had obviously been transformed by his own practice of the Dharma, and it inspired me to want to do the same. So I started practicing and studying with him. And after a certain amount of time, he led us step by step by step through the basic practices. He taught us how to do shamatha meditation, quiet sitting meditation. He taught us how to do Tonglen, the compassion meditation. He taught us how to use Tonglen in our everyday life, taking on the 59 mind training slogans of the Lojong tradition. And after that, he began teaching Ngöndro. And at first, I didn't exactly understand how all of those things fit together. How did shamatha meditation lead to compassion meditation, lead to the mantra practice of Chenrezig, which he also taught us at the beginning. So it was shamatha and Tonglen, and then this mantra practice, Chenrezig mantra. How did all of these things fit together? And it was then that he introduced us to the idea of lineage and told us the stories of the great masters of Mahamudra, and that the first of the great masters of Mahamudra, Tilopa, how he studied and practiced meditation under so many masters and accomplished awakening. And after he accomplished awakening, he had a vision of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, who appeared to him in the form of, I guess what you would call a primordial Sambhogakaya Buddha, wearing silks and jewels. And this Buddha, who came to be known as the Buddha Vajradhara, spoke to Tilopa and gave him essential instructions on how to accomplish Buddhahood through the practice of shamatha, tranquility meditation, and vipassana, or insight meditation. I make a little joke about this, which is probably not appropriate, but you'll keep my secret, right? I think about Tilopa, and I think about the idea of the Buddha appearing to him after his awakening and giving him the essential nectar of all of the teachings he had received from those 100 different human teachers. Essentially, he was saying, here's a short way to do what you just spent years working on. And I will give you these essential instructions, this shortcut, and you can practice it and you can teach your students to practice it, and they will be able to attain Buddhahood quickly through these instructions. And so this essential nectar of teaching was what Tilopa gave to his disciple, Naropa. And Naropa, another great Indian master, used these and other practices and attained Buddhahood himself. Then he taught the master Marpa, a translator from Tibet, who had come to India seeking whatever he could carry in terms of pure teachings to go back to Tibet. And so Marpa, the translator, got the essential instructions from Naropa, and then he brought them back to Tibet, where he imparted them to his students, who included Milarepa, the great yogi of Tibet. And so these essential instructions passed to Milarepa, and then Milarepa gave them to his student, the great physician Gampopa, who then realized Mahamudra using them, and then he taught his student, known as Dusum Kempa, or the knower of the 3 times, who we know as the first Karmapa. And then for generations after that, spiritual generations afterward, the Karmapa continued to return, holding and carrying this essential nectar of Mahamudra instructions and passing it down to the next spiritual generation. And so after explaining this to us, he showed us that the prayer that we had been reciting at the beginning of our Chenrezig practice was actually an instruction on Mahamudra itself. I'm going to show this to you and you'll recognize it immediately. It's the Mahamudra lineage prayer. And it tells the history in these opening verses. Great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Lord of Dharma, Gampopa, knower of the 3 times omniscient Karmapa, holder of the 4 elder and 8 younger lineages, the Drikung, the Taglung, the Tsalpa, these 3, the glorious Drukpa, and so on, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, unequaled protectors of beings, the Dakpo Kaju. I supplicate you, Kaju Lamas, grant your blessing that following your example, I hold your lineage. So in a way, Rinpoche had been teaching us about lineage before we knew we were learning about lineage, because we were reciting this prayer every week at the beginning of our Chenrezig sadhana. So in a way, there was a little steady drip, drip of blessing coming from all of these masters to us, so that when we heard him describe their realization and how this essential nectar of the Kaju, Ka, in the name Kaju, Ka means word. It's the word for word. And it's also the word for command. And it refers to the essential nectar of the Buddha's teachings. And Ju means lineage. So Kaju can also mean the lineage of the spoken word or the whispered instructions. I've heard it called different things. And it's speaking about these essential teachings that are always imparted from master to student, one spiritual generation after another. And so in that way, we learned about this Kaju lineage, this lineage that we were now going to be asking to hold. And how are we going to do that? Well, he explained the prayer has all of the instructions in it. Because when you hear about Mahamudra, it sounds like something rather grand. And you think, well, how could I ever approach these essential nectar teachings? What do I have to do to hear these essential nectars of teachings? And it's explained in the prayer, which was written by Pengur Zampo Zampo, who lived between the 6th and the 7th Karmapa. I do believe that I've got that right. And he was a student of the 6th and became the guru of the 7th by practicing and realizing Mahamudra. And so when Pengur Jampo Zampo ended his 18-year Mahamudra retreat on an island in the center of a lake, in this time, he was asked to summarize his realization of Mahamudra, and here it is. And it actually teaches the path of Mahamudra. Detachment is the foot of meditation, it is taught. To this meditator who is not attached to food and wealth, who cuts the ties to this life, grant your blessing that I have no attachment to honor or gain. This is describing the 4 thoughts that turn the mind toward the Dharma. The 4 thoughts that turn the mind. And you remember this because it's taught at the beginning of Ngöndro practice. The word Ngöndro means the preliminary or that which comes before. And it comes before receiving this essential nectar of teachings on Mahamudra. And so first you have to have, I guess, what you could call the fuel, to practice a path that will lead you out of samsara. And you need to have motivation to practice in order to want to leave samsara. And I think that this practice of contemplating these 4 thoughts, the preciousness of our life, the preciousness of our human birth, the impermanence of our life, the presence of and the reality of karma, action, cause, and result, and its actions in our life, and the defects of samsara. We have to contemplate them over and over again, perhaps using a formula like His Eminence Tai Situ Rinpoche teaches, where he says a good contemplation has 3 parts. You review all of the facts connected with the topic. Then when you have the experience internally of, yes, this is true for me, that's the recognition. And then from there, you resolve to practice the Dharma, because it is what makes the most sense in the face of what you've come to understand. So if you reflect on the preciousness of your life, you will come to a moment where you think, I have a very precious human birth, and I must practice the Dharma with this precious human life that I've received. And you can do the same in contemplating impermanence, and contemplating the reality of karma, and contemplating the reality that samsara, for all its wonderful things, has defects that make it impossible to find lasting happiness in samsara. And so that's what is referred to. This detachment is the foot of meditation. And that's the first part of Ngöndro. And then after that, he talks about the next 4 practices of Ngöndro. Devotion is the head of meditation, as is taught. The guru to the treasury of oral instruction. Grant her blessings that uncontrived devotion be born within. And so the next 4 parts of Ngöndro lead one after the other and culminate in a practice called guru yoga, where one supplicates the guru and asks them to give us the essential nectar of Mahamudra teachings. But if you look at it and think about it carefully, each of the 4 parts of the extraordinary foundations of Ngöndro, each part is influenced by and is a form of guru yoga. Think about it. Who is at the center of the first practice? Refuge, taking refuge and engendering bodhicitta. Who is in the center of the refuge gathering? The Buddha Vajradhara, who we are taught to think of as being our guru in person. And so Vajradhara Buddha is our guru, and our guru is our Vajradhara. Our guru is the Vajradhara who will impart these essential instructions to us. And so Situ Rinpoche likes to say of the 16th Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa, he says, was his Vajradhara. And so this is how a person begins their Ngöndro practice, seeing their guru as Vajradhara in the center of a refuge gathering. One takes refuge again and again in all of the 6 sources of refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the Lamas, the Yidams, the protectors. And guiding all beings with one takes refuge in this way. Then one takes the Bodhisattva vow from one's guru and the gathering of all of the awakened beings. And what happens at the very end? At the very end, all of those awakened beings dissolve into the form of Buddha Vajradhara, who then embodies them all, as well as embodying our teacher. And then we dissolve that guru into ourselves. And imagine for a moment that our mind and the guru's mind mix inseparably. And in that moment of meditation, we begin to understand what is meant by the guru opens the gate to the treasury of oral instructions. Because in that moment, when we relax our mind and know that our mind, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche put it this way, he said, relax in the confidence, or rest in the confidence of the mixing of your mind and the guru's mind. He says, it makes sense. The nature of the guru's mind is awakening. The nature of your mind is awakening. Of course, the two will mix. And so rest in that for a moment. The 16th Karmapa, when he visited the Columbus KTC in 1980, he gave a talk to us right before we left. And he said, I'm so happy to hear that some of you are doing Ngöndro. And he said, please, he said, do it carefully. And he said, and don't rush through it. He said, give it time and don't be impatient to finish it. He said, because for many of you, he said, it will be more profound than the actual practice of Mahamudra, because in those moments of meditation, you will experience your mind in a different way, and you will have your first taste of what it must be like to practice Mahamudra, he said. So from the very first of these Ngöndro practices, refuge and bodhicitta, the purification mantra of Vajrasattva, the Buddha Vajrasattva. Your guru is the central figure. He's Vajrasattva. And the offering of the mandala of the entire universe to the awakened ones, he's the center of the assembly receiving offerings. And in the Guru Yoga, he becomes more personal to you as you ask him over and over again, please grant me the blessing of co-emergent wisdom. And at the conclusion, you receive 4 purifying and blessing empowerments from him. And again, at the end of each session after session after session of Ngöndro, you rest in the confidence that your mind and the Guru's mind have mixed inseparably. Don't rush through it. That was the advice we got. Just stay there for a moment and relax in the confidence that your mind and the Guru's mind are the same. And so to me, practicing these next 4 parts of Ngöndro is really the quintessence of this. Grant your blessing that uncontrived devotion is born within. Once we realize that the teacher is the source of these instructions, we will have devotion for the teacher, especially since they are the ones who are bringing us this essential nectar. But that's not where the prayer ends, because now Pengur Jampo Zampo explains to us the main practice. We've talked about the 2 parts of Ngöndro. Now he's going to talk to us about the main practice, shamatha, or tranquility, and vipassana, or insight. So then he continues his instruction. Non-distraction is the body of meditation, as is taught. Whatever arises is fresh, the nature of thought. To the meditator who rests simply without altering it, grant your blessings that meditation is free from conception. When you get inner instructions on Mahamudra, you will hear a lot of these types of ideas. Shamatha is about developing non-distraction. It's developing the capacity to return to the object of meditation again and again and again and again. And recognizing, as one does, that the thoughts that one has in one's mind, when released in meditation, they disappear. And this is what they talk about. Whatever arises is fresh, the nature of thought, which is recognizing the emptiness of thought. And to the meditator who rests simply without altering it, meaning one rests in one's natural awareness, which is what remains when one is undistracted from the present moment of mind's natural awareness. And so by resting naturally in this way, we learn the practice of Mahamudra from our teachers. And hopefully we will have the blessing that our meditation is free from conception, meaning that our meditation is free from what another translation called intellectualization. At the beginning of the 9th Karmapa's short treatise on Mahamudra instructions called Pointing Out the Dharmakaya. He offers 4 pieces of advice, but the last of those pieces of advice is, for me, the last 2 are the most important. The third of his 4 pieces of advice is, don't intellectualize your meditation. Don't think, oh, my meditation has to fit the view that I've been studying here in all of these texts. The view is like this, so my meditation has to fit that. And that's not what it's about. And my absolute favorite is the last one. This teaching is called the teaching of the 4 conditions. And Trungpa Rinpoche has I think, a version of Pointing Out the Dharmakaya that's actually not complete, but it's interesting. And when he describes it, but Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, when he describes the 4th condition, he calls it the immediate condition, meaning when you practice meditation, you practice with your mind in the immediate moment. You don't bring any expectation of result. You have no ambition to, quote unquote, accomplish something. You just rest your mind. And I think this is lovely to think about. Free of conception also means resting naturally and the natural awareness as it is. But that's not the end, because just learning how to rest the mind isn't enough. We have to allow the mind's nature to be revealed to us. And that's what the last four lines of this are about. The nature of thought is Dharmakaya, as is taught. Nothing whatsoever, it arises as everything. To this meditator for whom all arises as unceasing play, grant your blessing that I realize samsara and nirvana inseparable. This one is a little too complicated to explain in a short period of time. But if one learns the techniques of Mahamudra Vipassana, one will come to understand that the nature of mind and the nature of thought are the same. This empty luminosity that they speak about, which is not a material thing. This mind that we have is not a material thing. It is nothing whatsoever. And yet it arises as everything. In other words, our mind is not a material thing, but it's not nothing because it experiences. And this resting within this experience and seeing its nature, one hopefully will see everything that arises in the mind as unceasing play of the mind's nature, just as the waves are the unceasing play of the ocean. As one rests in this, hopefully at some point, wisdom will arise from within that. Grant your blessing that I, the meditator, realize that samsara and nirvana are inseparable, meaning that the world that we are currently living in and our mind that is currently just confused consciousness, confused mundane consciousness, thinking of this, thinking of that, wanting this, not wanting that, pulled from side to side by habitual tendencies and emotional obscurations. Seeing the nature of this mind, we will see, hopefully, that this samsara has nirvana at its heart, and that we can see the nature of all things in the nature of our mind. And then at the end, these verses are traditional and were appended to the end of Pengur Jampo Zampo's prayer to drive home the point of the guru being so important. It's not just for poetic symmetry, because in this way, it says, through all my births, may I not be separated from the perfect guru and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma. Perfecting the qualities of the paths and stages, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. And in this way, Dorje Chang ends the prayer and begins the prayer. You see, it's a little bit of poetic symmetry. Dorje Chang begins the prayer and Dorje Chang ends the prayer. Only the Dorje Chang at the beginning is the root of the lineage, and hopefully we aspire to attain that same state. So that is a whirlwind tour through the Mahamudra lineage supplication. But what I'm hoping is that this little tour will give you an idea of what it means to practice Ngöndro. What it means to practice Ngöndro is to approach Mahamudra by remembering the truth of the preciousness of one's life, the impermanence of it, the action of karma in our life, and the defects of samsara, to give us the fuel for what I like to call the escape velocity. You know, rockets have to get escape velocity from Earth's gravity in order to go into outer space. Well, we need escape velocity to escape from samsara. We have to be convinced that there's no lasting happiness here. Otherwise, we'll want to stay just a little bit longer, like hitting the snooze button on the alarm in the morning. So in any case, we will always find a reason not to practice. And so contemplating these things will help us get a little fuel. And then if we practice taking refuge genuinely, engendering the bodhisattva motivation genuinely, we will have purified so much karma that comes from only believing in our own ego. And we will hopefully have surrendered just a little bit of it in taking refuge in the sources of refuge in our masters. And then taking the bodhisattva vow in their presence, we get serious about benefiting ourselves and others. But that's not enough. We all have so much negative karma from so many lifetimes to purify. The purification mantra of Vajrasattva helps us to accomplish that through the 4 powers of confession, which we'll have to talk about at another time. But the idea is that we place that karma in our mind stream so we can remove it. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche once said, there's only one good thing about bad karma, and that is that it can be purified. Karma is relative truth, and therefore it can be impacted by our practice. It can be affected by our practice. And so in this way, through the practice of Vajrasattva, we begin to give up those things that we might actually not be forgiving ourselves for. Our mistakes, our problems, our obscurations, our habitual tendencies of how we think about ourselves. We can surrender those through the practice of Vajrasattva and let them go. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, in his commentary on Ngöndro, which I recommend to everyone, very unique and very powerful, he says, once we have purified our karma through the refuge practice and the Vajrasattva practice, he says it's like we've purified a vessel, and now we need to fill it with nutritious food. Therefore, we accumulate the mind of virtue by mentally offering ourselves and everything that we experience to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for the benefit of suffering beings. And by making this gift over and over and over again, we soften our minds with generosity and virtue and offering. And this softness, he said, Khenpo Rinpoche said, is what forms the basis, the ground, the fertile ground for wisdom to arise from. And so and then finally, the Guru Yoga once again reiterates what we learned in the refuge practice. Only we become more ready, more able to let go of samsara attachment and receive the blessings of the lineage through the 4 empowerments. And after Ngöndro was done, the 16th Karmapa had a plan for us. And that was to give us the practice of the 2nd Karmapa, Karmapakshi, the Guru Sadhana, which is both a Guru Yoga and a deity sadhana, where the Guru, the 2nd Karmapa, is the deity, surrounded by lamas and yidams and protectors. And in this practice, which I would call supported Mahamudra, we rest our mind not just once, like we do at the end of a session of Ngöndro, but 5 separate times we rest our mind in Mahamudra in the Karmapakshi practice. And in so doing, we accumulate great merit and have a support for our Mahamudra practice. And so again, I'm sorry for I'm once again packing a 5-pound pack of flour in a 2-pound bag. But I'm hoping that if this is spoken to you about what it means to be a lineage practitioner, I feel like I've done a little bit of justice to the topic. I think that's a lot of talk from me, and it was so fast that you weren't able to write it down, but you've got the prayer. You've got the prayer, and the prayer hopefully will prompt you. If you want to hear this teaching in greater depth, you can go to Namse Bangso bookstore and buy the recordings of Trungpa Rinpoche teaching on this prayer in 1999, because that presentation and Khenpo Rinpoche's presentation are what I base this on. So Rinpoche taught us what it meant to be the follower of a lineage by talking about the history of the lineage. And in his Ngöndro commentary, he talked to us about how one part of Ngöndro builds on the other, and how eventually it delivers us at the doorstep to receive Mahamudra instructions through the teachings of our masters and our practice. So I best be quiet now. Let's see what if you're all right. Is everybody okay? I just have to, that was a lot. I had to get a lot in. So any questions or thoughts? I'm here. Well, then maybe we sit and meditate. There's a hand. Okay, yes.
I can ask a question. I always feel like I don't want to go first since I'm kind of crashing your KTC, but I've got Ngöndro questions.
Hey, go for it.
So you talked a lot about lineage, and in Guru Yoga, there is the sort of longer lineage prayer to the prayer
Right.
of the Guru's Mahamudra lineage. And that's kind of the one part of Guru Yoga where I maybe don't read all the words as closely, because it's the long section, and I don't know who a lot of these people are, and I'm not really sure what to do with all the details about so and so who did this and that. Do you have any recommendation for working with
Yes,
that prayer?
I do. The 42 lineage holders, it's a chunk, and so if you just think of them as being real people, because they are, these are real historic personages. I'm just recalling a funny comment. Trungpa Rinpoche's Life of Tilopa says, hey, if you read the historical record, you're going to think that Tilopa lived for like hundreds of years, or maybe he was 2 or 3 different people, or maybe he never existed at all. And Trungpa Rinpoche very simply says, that doesn't matter. What matters is the teaching. And I'm like, okay, that was really interesting. Anyhow, but these are historical people who actually some of them went to caves. I'm just saying, right? And if we think about the idea that these were people who actually sat and did all of this, and what gratitude we feel to them for carrying this spiritual generation after spiritual generation to us. I mean, in some ways, our job is the hardest one. It was easy for them to teach, and then we've got to hold that lineage, right? And so here's, I would think of them as real historical personages, because that helped me, right? And even though and if you want to sit down with me sometime, I'll go through the whole prayer with you and identify, we'll name names and stuff, because I got some teachings when I was in 3 retreat from the translators and stuff about who some of these people are. And because some of them are spoken of with poetic epithets, but it's really always going to be Karmapa, and then his heart children, his disciples, who then form the next spiritual generation and pass it down. Sometimes it's the Situ Rinpoche, sometimes it's the Gyaltsen Rinpoche, sometimes it's, you know, it's a different master for each generation. But that they were real people who actually just sat. And I think about those long hours of sitting, and I pray to them, asking for their blessing so I can sit too. Does that make sense? Okay, so hold that next question for a second. Let's see who else is. Any other? Yes, bottom of my Zoom.
A quick question, sorry, kind of bizarre. Are there any as the let's see how do I word this? Are there any like updates to the teachings, like with like Karmapa and other reincarnate? Does that make sense?
Mm.
Do they add anything new, or is it just like
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. I don't know the answer to that question strictly,
Yeah.
because really a lot of the instructions were actually codified, really early. And like one of the most essential Mahamudra instructional texts came from the third Karmapa. And that's still imparted master to student in person.
Yeah.
So, I think that there have been, what I would say, the improvements probably all kind of happened around the time of the ninth Karmapa, because he wrote the manuals that we are actually still using today. There are Mahamudra manuals. He wrote 3 of them that we have. And pointing out the Dharmakaya, the Mahamudra, Eliminating the Darkness of Ignorance, and the Ocean of Definitive Meaning.
Okay. What froze, I think.
There is 3, but wrote a Mahamudra chapter that's actually part of the Torch of True Meaning. But it was not included in the Judith Hansen version that was published in the 80s, I think. In any case, so Jamgon Khantrul the Great wrote a Mahamudra instruction that is still used today. And Kalu Rinpoche wrote a Mahamudra instruction that is still, the previous Kalu Rinpoche wrote one that's still used today. So there have been other formulations, but the basics are still there. The basics are still, it's baked in, so to speak. But there are different teachers will have different glosses on it, how they express it and so forth. But a lot of the teachings are the same. There's another book called The Moonbeams of Mahamudra. That's another popular text that's still used because it's so short. Sort of what we're doing at KTD Monastery is that we're working out ways to provide Mahamudra transmissions for the students. And but in the meantime, there are a few people who can impart some of the instructions. And so it's a little piecemeal right now, but yeah, it does exist. And even if what you receive is the instructions that you get for doing each of the parts of Ngöndro, that contains Mahamudra instruction as well. So there's a lot of ways that Mahamudra is taught and practiced even by us at the center level. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, back to you, Aniseki. Did you have another question?
Well, you mentioned a few times, okay, we're holding the lineage now, and these people held the lineage in the past. What does that entail? What are the responsibilities? And
well, first of all, we have to practice really well and have great bodhicitta. Let's face it. You have to have the bodhisattva motivation, right, in order to be able to teach. And you have to have like the blessings of your guru. You know what I'm saying? By meaning, we do our practice and we receive the blessing. It's kind of like that. And so I think that what we have to do now that we've received it and are trying to hold it, we really should practice it as thoroughly and completely and presently as possible. Yes, we all have Ngöndro sessions where we're kind of phoning it in. you know. And we all have sessions like that where we're just kind of like not understanding it, not getting the point of it. And sometimes we'll have to get more instruction in it in order for it to be more relevant to us. And so we need to go get those instructions if our Ngöndro practice isn't relevant to us, is it working for us? We need to consult with someone who can help it become more relevant and more effective. And so I'd say that that's kind of the main thing, is to work on the bodhisattva motivation and so on. Very interesting thing. Trungpa Rinpoche said this, and then I'm studying one of Kalu Rinpoche's, the previous Kalu Rinpoche's Mahamudra books, and he said the same thing. The Lojong teachings that we receive are full of incredible blessing to help people who are doing Mahamudra. And so how those are connected, that's a whole nother talk. But he really encouraged people who are doing Ngöndro, this was Trungpa Rinpoche, to really work hard on their bodhicitta, because we kind of lose track of the purpose of our practice sometimes, and like, why am I doing this thing repetitively, you know? And what's my motivation? So we have to continuously find motivation. Khenpo Rinpoche said one way to do that is to remember all the suffering beings you want to benefit. And that, he said, that's really helpful. The other thing is he said, to make Ngöndro relevant, he says, do your Ngöndro practice with the thought that it will purify and cleanse any bad habit that you might have, any state of mind you can't seem to shake. If you're in a bad mood, may it help, right? If you've got a bad habit, aim your practice, he said, directly at whatever is bothering you. Maybe there's a problem in your family. Maybe there's a problem at work. Aim your practice directly at that problem and ask for the enlightened ones to help you solve that problem. And that way your practice then comes into mind as a solution for what's going on. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, others, I think we have time. We have time for a couple more if there's out there.
I have kind of a lineage question.
Okay, yeah.
About
yes.
about transmission,
Yeah.
so I don't really have, I have bits and pieces of information, but not the whole story. So I know that, you have to do a 3-year retreat in order to be a Lama, but just because you're a Lama doesn't mean you can necessarily teach various different subjects. And then there's people that can give transmissions, but I don't know.
Right.
How are you authorized to give transmissions? How does that work?
Yeah, that I really am glad you asked about this, because there is, I do think we need to get clearer. All of us need to get clear in expressing it and describing it so that everybody knows what the situation is. And I didn't understand it a lot either. And so Khenpo Rinpoche, basically, when we graduated from 3-year retreat, he gave us this talk that was not recorded. He actually asked for it not to be recorded. And what was so interesting is when it was over, we all compared notes and everybody heard something different. So, which is cool because I knew he had the power to do that, but wow. So what I heard him say was, traditionally in Tibet, when a person finishes the 3-year retreat, they are given the title of Lama. Now, what does this mean? He said, this means that from now until you die, you have one function and one function only, and that is to connect everyone you meet with the Dharma. So he didn't tell us how to do that, but the Bodhisattva action tells us how to do that, just by being kind. Just, you know what I'm saying? Just, you don't have to like teach Dharma. You try your best to be it. So transmission, on the other hand, happens, you're right. Not all lamas who finish retreat are fully qualified to do everything. And for that, they need to rely on their teachers. Their teachers are the best judge of what they've accomplished, what they're good at, what they can do, and all of that. And the amount of autonomy a teacher has is dependent on their teacher's trust in them and also, you know, their own ability to try to keep it together, you know. And so, for example, in my retreat, several of us were encouraged to teach at the introductory level. And so that's what I have been doing for like 20 something years, is teaching at the introductory level. However, as time went on, Khenpo Rinpoche, I would ask him, hey, somebody wants me to give refuge. How do I do that? And he had one of the lamas teach us how to do that. And then I said, now people are asking me for the Bodhisattva about, like, how do I do that? And then he taught me how to do that. And, you know, the only thing I did not really seriously contemplate was giving empowerments, because my Tibetan reading is so bad that there is no way that I could ever do it, because you need to be a fluent reader, and I just never got good at it. And also it's very karmically heavy to give empowerment. So I'm kind of glad that didn't happen for me. But there are three types of transmission, basic types of transmission. There's the transmission of instructions, like how to do shamatha. There's a transmission involved where you're receiving it as you're giving it as you received it. And then there's all of the transmissions that go with a mantra practice, right? You learn, you receive the permission blessing of the empowerment, where you receive the permission and blessing to visualize yourself as the deity of that practice. Second, you receive the reading transmission of the text of practice that authorizes you and gives you permission to study and practice the text. And third, you get the practical instructions on how to visualize, how to meditate on that deity. And so these three permission blessings some people give them, some people don't. I can only give the reading transmission to things I've been permitted to give the reading transmission to. And then the third type of transmission that I know of, there are probably countless others, but these are the three I'm familiar with. Just the basic instructions on how to meditate, how to do all of these kinds of things, all of the transmissions that go with mantra practice, and then finally Mahamudra transmission. I was, let's put it this way, I never learned how to do it, but Rinpoche is very cute. He says, well, he said, you have my permission to teach the manual entitled Pointing Out the Dharmakaya. You have that. But he never really told me how to do it. So I've been stumbling along, asking him. Before he passed away, I would try to do it, and then I'd come back and ask him questions. I'm sure I amused him, and he would tell me, you know, what to do. But
so the people that give, like, you know, you're giving a Yamantaka or a Vajrakulaya empowerment, that's something that you have to receive specific permission from your teacher to give that transmission. Is that how it works?
That's what my teacher, that's how he did everything. Was that you cannot yourself just like assume the responsibility.
No, of course not.
Right. Yeah, right.
That would be. But this is, I mean, and okay,
on.
if you're a Rinpoche, does that like automatically give you
that?
that?
I don't know. That I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I do not answer to that. But Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, let's use him as an example. He would only give empowerments that he himself had received, and he would only give empowerments of something he had fulfilled the mantras for. So believe it or not, when I first met him, he had a mala in his hand like continuously, because he was continuing to accumulate the mantras that he would need to accumulate, the thousands, if not millions of mantras that you need to accumulate before you're allowed to give an empowerment. So, I mean, so he was doing mantra for years and years and years. So, I mean, so that was how he rolled. And I kind of look at him as the gold standard. He would only give something that he got permission from his teacher to give, and so forth and so on. And or that he would pray about and receive, you know, a go-ahead for. There's one example, a story he told me. Are we run out of time? Yeah, we're running out of time. He told me that before he gave the transmission for the profound inner meaning, he he prayed to the Karmapa, who had at that time passed away. And he prayed for a blessing that, is it okay for me to share this? Because this is not one of the things you told me to share, right? And so he really thought about it deeply and prayed to Karmapa deeply, and he had a dream. And in that dream, he saw a woman, and it was actually, he named the person. It's a person I knew from Columbus. And he said, she appeared to me wearing white clothing, and she handed me a white conch shell. And he said, I took that as a sign from that, that it was going to be okay if I would share that. So even great masters such as himself, they still were so conscientious about the whole process. They didn't just make an assumption. Does that help at all?
Oh, well, I was sure it wasn't based on an assumption, but I just wasn't clear on who authorizes these things and how does that work. And you've got people with different titles. You've got the Lama, you've got the Acharya, you've got the Khenpo, you've got the Geshes, and does the title give you permission to transmit certain things, or does that come directly from your teacher? Or
it's a combo. It's a combo. There that's going to be a whole nother class, because the nomenclature and understanding the nomenclature, there are monastics and there are lamas, and then even among monastics there are scholars, and even among lamas there are scholars and non-scholars.
So the Khenpo degree, that's a scholarly degree, right? So what's an Acharya?
It's the master's degree. It's the equivalent of the master's degree.
The next step down. The Khenpo is like a Geshe, right?
And not exactly the same. They memorize different texts. But yes, they're similar, but not the same. For example, Trungpa Rinpoche was both a Khenpo and a Geshe.
Yes, I was astonished to find that out. I was reading his biography that he was also Gelu Geshe degree
of the
holder.
highest degree of the highest degree.
Geshe La Rumpa, the very highest Geshe Gelu degree. Yeah, that was not that I'm surprised. I mean, he was an incredible scholar, but I didn't know that detail.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate your question. I'm sorry I can't fully answer it with the situation that I have right now. But if you want to ask me,
so the Acharya, that's a master's degree, but does everybody have to do a 3-year retreat, or is that optional?
That depends on the lineage. There are 4 different lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, and they all work differently.
This would be Karma Kagyu.
That would be what I know is Karma Kagyu. But
no, but I mean, so if you're a Karma Kagyu Acharya, you have to do a 3-year retreat.
That I don't know. Oh, that I don't know the answer to.
I was just curious about how this whole system works.
Yes. Well, you know what we should do? We should ask one of the Khenpos to explain it to us. I think that would be a really good question to ask for one of the Khenpos to just give a short talk on sometime. Because while we're doing these introduction to Buddhism classes, I keep hoping that we can do podcast-sized episodes to be helping, just well, what about this and what about that? And answer me this and answer me that. And that would be an absolute ideal topic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Charles, so you'll be the last question this evening.
Might be too long. This concerns the beginners. Later. This is for the beginners here. Those who have not started Ngöndro, or those of us who are just beginning. I've heard His Holiness Karmapa gave a different quantity of numbers that needed to be practiced. For example, those who have first heard you had to do 100,000, 100,000, 11111, and then for those who came along later, they could do 10,000. So if those who have not started yet, can they? What's the level that they could start?
Yeah, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was asked about this while he was still alive, and he said that yes, he did hear that there were some lamas who were reducing the numbers of things, numbers of repetitions of the Ngöndro practices, And what he said to me was, he said, it is so much better if they can do the entire 100,000, 111, comma 111, you know. And I see Tara's remarking that Mingyur Rinpoche requires that. And so when he was giving the teaching entitled the Ngöndro for our day, he did mention a lower number, but I myself encourage people to take the 111,111.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
You're all still young. You can do
Because
it.
yeah, listen, he says you're still young, you can do it, right? Yeah. And so yeah, I know. But hopefully this is useful. Now I know I'm holding you after class. And you know, and Charles, I wish I could answer your question better, but I think I kind of want to end on a really I want to end by sharing a poem with you about Ngöndro. I did not write it, first of all. It was written by someone else, and
You're freezing on us.
is that someday I meet this guy. I would very much like to meet him. 20 something, because it's more than 20, because I was allowed to teach the 4 parts of Ngöndro before I did 3-year retreat. I wasn't a Lama, so it was kind of a little strange, but he let the senior students teach the Ngöndro. I just want to show this poem to you because it was written regarding the prostration practice, but it just kind of knocks my socks off every time I read it. And the guy's obviously British because of the way he spells things. But I sure hope someday I get to meet this guy, because I think this poem is the bee's knees. Let me move this up here so you can see it. So I'll read it. It's just, you know, it's really moving. I acknowledge the errors and set sail with their wind into the beginning of this storm. This practice of my 2 feet of mud and sunshine, and my forehead which touches earth and floors repeatedly. This practice of my 2 hands, folded leaves and buds in spring, of my stomach a river, of my backbone a bridge across chasms. I came to you before asking for blessings and whatever I could carry away, hoping to pay with muscle and brute determination. I came with the colors of desperation. Now my buds are my own. I turn myself into a horse burning in the sun. I pour myself into my own waters. I bow down for the pleasure of it, overwhelmed to find you enthroned, regardless of our weeping. It is I who come to meet you and come to meet you and come to meet you without expecting affirmation, throwing hope over, grabbing my own rope and climbing it toward your ever lucid presence. So I had to do that. That's that.
Amazing.
Oh, Lama K, you're frozen.
My all-time favorite spiritual poem. You kind of know. Yeah. Sorry?
You were freezing. Your internet connection was
Oh,
freezing.
yeah, I know. Living in a rural area, what a thing, right? Yeah. So in any case, I really appreciate you letting me read that, because if you've done it, as they say, if you know, you know. If you've done Ngöndro, you know. So, well, let's dedicate our merit and make the aspiration that through this conversation, that our commitment to practice and taking and holding this lineage continues to grow and flourish. And may we benefit suffering beings in every possible way. I'll recite this short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much, Lama Kathy.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Okay, happy practicing.
Thank
Yeah,
Thank you.
we can
Okay.
stay on for a
Did
little
you
bit if anybody wants to talk.
Okay, very good. And Aniseki, see you tomorrow.